I was at home. I was with the children. I'd taken Beatrice to a Pizza Express in Woking for a party.
Prince Andrew was born into unimaginable privilege, a life of marble halls and golden ceilings where rules bent at his feet. But at 65, the Queen's once dashing son has become the monarchy's greatest humiliation. What devastating news has emerged that leaves even his harshest critics stunned with sympathy? From the moment Prince Andrew entered the world, he was wrapped in a cocoon of privilege so thick that reality seemed unable to pierce through. Born into marble halls and golden ceilings, he existed in a realm where ordinary rules simply didn't apply. But that protective armor, meant to shield him from the harsh realities of life, slowly transformed into something far more sinister, a prison of expectations and entitlement that would ultimately consume him. The charming prince, once paraded as the monarchy's glittering soldier, the dashing hero in naval uniform, has crumbled into something far darker, a portrait of disgrace that now haunts the very institution he was born to represent. The whispers that circled him for decades were never baseless rumors or exaggerated tales concocted by jealous staff or vengeful tabloids. They were clear, insistent warnings that those inside the palace walls refused to confront, choosing instead to turn blind eyes and deaf ears to the growing storm. Even as a small child, Andrew's world revolved around a single dangerous truth that would shape every decision he ever made. Rules applied to everyone but him. Before the tabloids splashed his scandals across their front pages, before the interviews that would define his downfall and cement his infamy, he was already learning a lesson that would dictate his entire life's trajectory. Those who knew him in his earliest childhood years described a boy who didn't test limits out of innocent curiosity or youthful exuberance, but out of a deep, almost instinctive sense of entitlement. At Windsor Castle, barely 5 years old and already aware of his elevated status, he strutted through the stable yard where grooms and guards worked diligently under the hot sun. He jeered at soldiers, mocking their rigid posture and military discipline. He swung sticks viciously at horses' legs, causing the animals to rear and panic. He tormented the palace dogs for his own twisted amusement, pulling their tails and laughing at their yelps of pain. When staff members asked him to stop, pleading with the young prince to show some basic compassion and human decency, he only grew bolder and more aggressive. The breaking point came when two frustrated grooms, pushed beyond their absolute limit by the prince's relentless cruelty, lifted the little prince by his arms and dumped him unceremoniously into a manure heap, covering him completely with dung in a crude but desperate attempt at discipline. For most children, such a profoundly humiliating moment would have been transformative, a lesson in humility and respect that would stay with them forever. But for Andrew, it reinforced something else entirely, that humiliation could pass like a brief rainstorm, but his royal privilege remained forever untouchable, an invisible shield that protected him from all consequences. Within just a few years, the marriage crumbled spectacularly under the weight of scandal after scandal. Sarah was caught in deeply compromising situations that were splashed across tabloid front pages worldwide, while Andrew carried on with his own reckless behavior that only deepened the cracks in their relationship. By the time their divorce was finalized in 1996, their bond had become a bizarre mixture of legal separation and continued closeness. A situation that fueled endless whispers and speculation about their true relationship. To the crown, Andrew was no longer a dependable member of the royal family. He had become unpredictable, volatile, and dangerously careless with the monarchy's carefully cultivated image. The 1990s only worsened his already tarnished reputation. While ordinary British families endured crushing economic struggles and government austerity measures, Andrew was globetrotting on the taxpayer's dime. Helicopters, private jets, and five-star luxury resorts became his normal routine, his standard mode of operation. The press branded him Air Miles Andy, mercilessly mocking the millions of pounds he burned through in extravagant travel expenses. Investigations revealed not just excessive holidays and wasteful spending, but also the numerous perks and privileges he extracted through his military status and royal connections. For families who could barely afford heating during harsh British winters, the sight of a pampered prince dismissing all criticism as if his royal title granted him complete immunity was absolutely infuriating. But his arrogance went much deeper than simply wasting money. Inside Buckingham Palace, whispers among staff members turned into absolute certainty about his character. They noticed his obsession with status symbols, his military uniform dripping with medals he hadn't truly earned, his constant need to be photographed at elite clubs and exclusive events, his desperate pursuit of glamorous women who made him feel important. Friends and acquaintances described him as remarkably gullible, easily fooled by even the most obvious flattery, and forever chasing the hollow illusion of importance and relevance. The turning point in Andrew's descent came through associations that should have immediately raised red flags to anyone with even basic judgment. When Ghislaine Maxwell, the socialite daughter of disgraced media mogul Robert Maxwell, introduced him to Jeffrey Epstein, alarm bells should have been deafening. Epstein was already whispered about in high society circles, his reputation tainted by dark rumors that respectable people quietly acknowledged. Any cautious man, anyone with a shred of self-preservation instinct, would have walked away immediately. But Andrew didn't walk away. Instead, he leaned in closer, drawn like a moth to a flame. Greed and his desperate hunger for status completely blinded him to the obvious dangers. For those who had worked around Andrew for years, this wasn't surprising at all. Palace staff had long endured his explosive outbursts, his breathtaking arrogance, and his strange obsessions. To them, it was only a matter of time before the world would see the true Andrew, the man who screamed at servants over misplaced teddy bears, who threw violent tantrums about curtains, and who demanded absolute obedience from everyone around him. When the infamous photograph emerged showing him with Virginia Giuffre, a teenager at the time, standing beside Maxwell with Andrew's arm wrapped casually around her bare waist, it wasn't shocking to those inside the palace walls. It was confirmation of everything they had witnessed. The picture became one of the most damning royal images in modern history, a frozen moment that would haunt Andrew forever. But his ruin didn't begin with Epstein. His moral decline had been a slow burn, years in the making, building toward an inevitable explosion. Flight logs placed Andrew on Epstein's private jet multiple times. Witnesses saw him at the New York mansion, mingling with young women in circumstances that grew increasingly suspicious. Even after Epstein served prison time for soliciting prostitution from a minor, Andrew was photographed walking with him through Central Park, smiling broadly, as though nothing had happened, as though his friend's criminal conviction was merely an unfortunate misunderstanding. For the shocked public watching these events unfold, it was completely unthinkable. A British royal prince openly associating with a convicted sex offender. The moment Andrew could not escape came when Virginia Giuffre stepped forward with detailed accusations. She claimed that Epstein and Maxwell had trafficked her as a vulnerable teenager, forcing her into sexual encounters with powerful men. One of those men, she stated clearly and publicly, was Prince Andrew. The photograph of Andrew, Maxwell, and Virginia, barely 17 years old, became impossible to ignore or explain away. Andrew denied everything with increasing desperation. He claimed he had no memory of ever meeting her. He insisted he had never been upstairs in Maxwell's London townhouse. He even suggested, incredibly, that the photograph might be an elaborate fake, doctored by his enemies. But his excuses sounded hollow and desperate to anyone listening. Each denial only deepened public suspicion and anger. As investigative journalists dug deeper into his connections, the scandal grew exponentially worse. Reports confirmed that Andrew had stayed at Epstein's luxurious New York mansion even after Epstein's widely publicized conviction. For most people, such behavior was simply unimaginable, a moral failing of staggering proportions. For Andrew, it was just a convenient place to stay, a comfortable refuge where he was treated like royalty. In November 2019, Prince Andrew sat down for what was supposed to be his opportunity to clear his name and restore his reputation. The BBC Newsnight interview with Emily Maitlis was meant to be carefully controlled, a chance to present his side of the story. Instead, it became the final nail in his coffin, the moment that transformed embarrassment into complete humiliation. The interview was supposed to last an hour. It destroyed a lifetime. Faced directly with Virginia Giuffre's detailed allegations, Andrew denied everything with bizarre explanations that defied belief. He insisted he had been elsewhere on the specific night she claimed Epstein had trafficked her to him. His alibi? A visit to Pizza Express in Woking with his daughter Beatrice, a detail so oddly specific it seemed rehearsed. But it wasn't the Pizza Express defense that captured worldwide attention and ridicule. Asked about reports that he had been seen sweating profusely while dancing in a nightclub with Virginia, Andrew replied with stunning confidence that he couldn't sweat. He explained, with apparent seriousness, that during the Falklands War, he had suffered an overdose of adrenaline that permanently damaged his sweat glands, leaving him unable to perspire. The excuse was instantly mocked worldwide by doctors, veterans, and ordinary citizens alike. The prince was no longer being discussed in tones of respect or even moral outrage. He was being laughed at, ridiculed mercilessly as the man who claimed, "I don't sweat." From that catastrophic moment, his downfall accelerated at breathtaking speed. Public sympathy, what little remained, evaporated completely overnight. The interview was universally labeled a complete disaster, not only because of Andrew's implausible answers, but because it revealed his shocking lack of self-awareness. He seemed genuinely convinced that his royal title and his version of events would be sufficient to silence all doubt. Instead, he showed the world exactly what critics had been saying for years, that he was arrogant, completely detached from reality, and shockingly unprepared to face any form of accountability. The royal family could no longer protect him the way they had for decades. Behind the heavy doors of Buckingham Palace, a painful calculation was being made by family members who had once defended him. King Charles, now holding the throne, understood clearly that Andrew represented more than just a personal family scandal. He represented a fundamental crack in the monarchy itself, a threat to the institution's very survival. Just 4 days after that disastrous interview, November 20th, 2019, Prince Andrew was forced to make a humiliating public announcement. He declared he would be stepping back from all public royal duties for the foreseeable future. It marked the first time in modern royal history that a senior member had been pushed into semi-retirement not because of age or health, but because of scandals so severe the institution couldn't withstand his continued visibility. The backlash following the interview had been immediate and devastating. Businesses, universities, and charities that had proudly displayed their royal patronage raced to cut all ties with him. Institutions scrambled frantically to erase his name from their websites and promotional materials. Even Andrew himself was forced to admit in a carefully worded statement that his association with Epstein had become a major disruption to the royal family's important work. But the public disgrace didn't end there. After Epstein died under suspicious circumstances in his jail cell in 2019, and after Ghislaine Maxwell's dramatic arrest in 2020, Andrew still adamantly refused to set foot in the United States. His high-priced lawyers fought aggressively to block court proceedings and prevent him from being served legal papers. He dodged service until Virginia Giuffre finally sued him directly in New York federal court in 2021. That lawsuit proved catastrophic for whatever remained of his reputation. To avoid the spectacle of a public trial with all its damaging testimony, Andrew agreed to a financial settlement reported to be as high as £12 million. Queen Elizabeth herself quietly helped finance a substantial portion of it, draining royal coffers to protect her favorite son. Andrew insisted loudly it was not an admission of guilt, but the entire world saw it differently. A prince had written an enormous check to silence allegations of abuse. By the time Queen Elizabeth died in 2022, Andrew's role within the family had shrunk to almost nothing. He was explicitly banned from wearing his cherished military uniform during her funeral procession, allowed only the briefest exception for a single vigil. When he appeared in public, crowds openly booed him in the streets. Protesters shouted, "You're a sick old man," and police had to physically intervene to protect him. For the first time in centuries of British history, a royal prince could not appear before his own people without being visibly and audibly despised. Behind closed palace doors, King Charles made his position absolutely clear to his disgraced brother. Andrew begged desperately to be reinstated to some royal duties, any duties at all. He even considered taking legal action to fight his way back into public life, but Charles and Prince William stood firm. There was simply no room left for him in the modern monarchy. In early 2022, Buckingham Palace officially stripped Andrew of his remaining military titles and every single royal patronage he still held. Reports emerged throughout 2023 and 2024 revealing that Charles was making deliberate, calculated moves to distance the entire royal family from his troubled brother. Andrew and his ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson, were increasingly excluded from major family gatherings and traditional events. Even Christmas at Sandringham, a cherished tradition deeply tied to senior royals, became uncertain for them. Charles understood a brutal truth. To keep Andrew visible would be to keep the scandal alive and festering. To erase him completely was to give the monarchy its only real chance at survival and public rehabilitation. Prince William, palace insiders quietly revealed, has been one of the strongest and most uncompromising voices for cutting Andrew out of royal life completely and permanently. William understands with crystal clarity how desperately fragile public trust in the monarchy has become in the 21st century. He knows that every single time Andrew's name resurfaces in the news, it drags the entire royal family backward into scandal and mockery. For William, who will one day be king, the future of the crown requires painful sacrifice, even if that means permanently casting aside his own uncle. The boy who once believed the world bent to his will has finally learned about consequences. Stripped of titles, exiled from family, and despised by the public, Prince Andrew's fall from privilege is complete. His tragic legacy serves as a stark reminder that no amount of royal blood guarantees immunity from justice.